Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. The Ags Market Blast with the awesome Angie, who is there. Right, 1 second. Invites co-host. Co-host invite sent. Come on down, Angie. For those that aren't aware, this is where mainly Angie does a rapid roundup of the latest pricing, flows, and market moving news in agricultural markets. Let me quickly do the legals. Nothing discussed in this space is assessment constitutes trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ Global Limited, traders PIQ or PIQ Suite, or its affiliates, which is, of course, Angie and myself. How are you doing, my darling? Apologies if there's a bit
I
noisy
am
in the
great.
background.
No, you're fine. How are you? How was the trip back? Did you have a safe
Uh,
flight?
it I had a safe flight. It was a very nice trip to Malta. Given me a bit of a recce to see if I might want to move out there, and I do. So I'm going to go back out there for a few weeks in February and see what it's like. But yeah, I landed and then came
Nice.
straight. It was a Friday, so I landed in Gatwick and came straight to London and straight to the pub.
Of course. Well, yes, you have to. It's a Friday
Obviously,
in
obviously, it's
London.
a Friday.
You must pub it up. So,
Yeah.
well, let's party then. Speaking of Friday, happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to the second to last Friday, really, of the year. Because let's be honest, how many people? Yeah. I mean, how many people are really going to come in the last Friday of the year here in a couple weeks? Probably not me anyway. So, looking at market wise or market things this morning. I'd say probably the biggest focus or the thing that I'm going to get the most questions on from my growers is going to be what the hell happened in corn yesterday, and why do I feel so sad? And so, really, when it comes down to it, we'd kind of overextended the move to the high side, and seen some pretty significant buying. We went from a low of 428 last Thursday to a high of 452, really kind of tweaking ourselves back up to what had been the high side of the recent range, October highs. But in addition to the futures rally, we touched on this yesterday, you had seen basis strengthen. And so for a lot of growers, my corn growers too, from the start of October until what you could move corn for now, you basically seen an improvement almost of $1 in cash values, just flat cash values. Now, not every grower is profitable even at these levels now, but if you have to generate cash and you've seen a recovery, a pretty substantial recovery, or if you have bushels that are unpriced on basis that are in the hands of the commercial or on delayed price or something like that, I think you've seen a pretty solid flow of farmer selling. You've also seen some commercial selling. The cash market had backed off like we talked about yesterday, and so to classify yesterday as disappointing is fine, but to classify it as also surprising, in my opinion, I don't really see it as such. Now we'll have to see how we finish today and finish the week in general. It is disappointing to kind of finish or land back to where we were post or the pre-report after the report numbers, but again, we're heading into the end of the year, and there's really not much in the way of excitement happening from an overall standpoint. So we can call yesterday's market action disappointing, but I'm not going to say it's necessarily a trend setter for the while as we move ahead. Anything on that before I always like to add, I'm going to start asking at the end of each bullet point before I move to the next one, just to.
No. Well, funny enough, so I did have one question. Obviously, I've got, what my background is obviously oil and nat gas trading, which is why I love doing these shows with you because every day is a learning day. Obviously, markets in general, I was going to ask markets in general, obviously liquidity, everyone goes home over the Christmas period. But obviously with ag markets being as it's physical,
Mhm.
I was going to ask, do you find that the trade and that drops off over Christmas and New
Yes.
Year? And you answered that in bullet point number one anyway.
Yeah,
So, so
we're
there we go,
lazy as all get
perfect.
out. I mean, honestly, from a merchandiser standpoint, from a cash trader standpoint, like the last thing you want to do, and any trader feels this way, right? The last thing you want to do is mess up the entire year in the last 2 weeks of the year. Like, I can remember my boss one time just telling me not to fumble. Just don't fumble before the end of the year. Then I think I
Yeah,
had,
do you know what? This is it, and
go ahead.
this is a great point as well because I think it's impossible to make your year in the next over the next 3 weeks, but it's very possible to lose your year
Yes.
in these Christmas markets in a liquid market. So that's, you know, capital preservation and all that. Just kind of just get your hedges on over this period. I think, yeah, that's kind of
That's what
yeah,
we're
that's
seeing.
trading 101 really, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's what we're seeing because on to piggyback on the yesterday's disappointing market action, and in wheat, everyone can say wheat was disappointing yesterday too, but I think wheat just wakes up with the goal of disappointment. Either direction, it will disappoint you. But that was one of those things where like the export sales figures that we had seen for the week had fallen off dramatically from what we've seen for the average over the last few weeks. They are not out of line from a seasonal standpoint. To see almost a million metric ton of corn sold in a week is not anything that should be classified as disappointing, but it can be when you're so used to seeing a couple million metric tons sold in a week or whatever. The soybean number was down a bit and everyone was like, oh my gosh, that's so terrible. But at the same time, like I said, we've seen this aggressive purchasing pace and a lot of folks are really well covered, not only for the end of the year, but into the start of Q1 of 25. And so to see a slowdown in business should not be surprising. I mean, like I said, you don't want to mess up the year. You don't really know what's going to happen after the start of the new year with the Trump administration and some of these things. And so to see a bit of a slowdown in some of this demand, in my opinion, is we should see it, and to see a bit of a backfill on the corn side, not overly disappointing at all. But yeah, we're definitely going to start to see folks like next week will be great. Monday, Tuesday, I think everyone's going to put in at least 85%. Wednesday, it's going to end up closer, probably 65. And then Thursday, Friday, it's the same thing as being a kid in class and having the teacher roll in the VCR when we were younger. Like we're going to be phoning it in for sure, I think. So
Yes, exactly
so we'll
that.
be seeing
That's a
that.
great way of explaining
And
it.
then last point, we'll be watching Brazil, not only Brazilian weather, but to me, I'm watching Brazilian economic developments. So yesterday, one of the things that we'd seen is their central bank came in and increased rates more than expected, 100 basis point increase. Everyone was thinking 75. And then they said, oh yeah, expect two more of those. So while we're talking about rate cuts just about everywhere else, Brazil is jacking their rates up with a target rate of like 14.25% by March. Now, one of the things that's most interesting to me about what's going on in Brazil is that Brazil's leadership or Brazil's president, and I'm not an expert in this, so like I'm kind of talking from I'm a spectator and this is what I'm watching, but it does matter to grains and grain sales eventually. But to have, Brazil's president and Brazil's central bank, kind of being at each other's throats to a certain extent, we are seeing a transition in central bank leadership after the start of the year. And whether or not that kind of aligns with Lula's more, increased federal spending and some of these other things. He's more of a left-leaning individual. And so you've seen Brazil kind of struggle with a lack of reining in government spending. You've seen their currency, really, really weaken, and that's had an impact on how grain is moving and things like that. And so one of the things that I'm really watching is what happens here over the next few months, because we've seen the effect of runaway inflation and loose currency rates and some of these other things impact Argentina grain movement. Now Argentina's flipped and they're kind of the gap between their unofficial and their official currency and some of these other things that you've seen, has completely gone away. Milei is doing a lot of fiscal moves that has helped improve their economic outlook. And you're almost the opposite in Brazil right now. And so we have this massive crop. We have all of these things coming. Brazil has all of this room for expansion. But if they can't get their economic house in order, things could get interesting. And the flow of grain that we think we could be seeing after the harvest may not necessarily be what you think it will be, because farmers will change the way they approach a market if the entire economic outlook is uncertain. And so that's going to be something I'm going to be watching, and really trying to get a grip on. Like I said, I'm not an expert in that realm, but it is something that could impact things going forward, especially when it comes to pipeline, what's in the pipeline, what's moving from a grain standpoint, and, what we see happen when it comes to US business. So I think that covers it for now on what I'm watching for Friday.
Fantastic. And yeah, brilliant. As always, thank you very much. And again, I think we're getting a bit better at kind of refining in terms of talking quickly. And I'm trying to stay out of the way as much as possible because, again, we do want to keep this rapid fire, and it seems to be always me that slows it down. So I do apologise for
I
that
don't
because I
think
should
so
just
at
shut
all.
up and let you talk because you're the best at this.
I think we should just say 10
But
minutes and
Angie,
then we
thank you
can.
so much.
We should just say
Well,
10
do you know
minutes and
what?
then we can
Actually,
impress
that
everyone.
I think this just bite the bullet. Yeah, this do that. I think I'm going to redo the all the marketing material. We'll go 10 minutes ish.
Ish.
But no, that's
Heavy of it
perfect.
ish.
Thank you so much for this week, as
Yeah.
always. And do you know what? I'm going to wish you and I'm going to wish everyone else a spectacular weekend. Stay out of trouble. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. And I will see you all, hopefully, Monday.
With that level of loose regulations, I appreciate it. So yeah, we'll see you Monday. Have a good
See you
one.
later. Bye. And you. Bye bye.